All right, so everybody, thanks so much for listening. If you're a first timer, please like, subscribe, share this. If you're listening to us on one of the radio stations, we greatly appreciate your time tonight. And definitely tell your friends if you're listening to us. Obviously, you are if you're hearing this, but we appreciate that and just continue to listen. We want more listeners so we can bring on these great people that have amazing stories to tell. But going back into politics again, Senator Robert Britto, he just was elected 2022, and he just served his first session, I should just say, as far as legislative session. A lot of things got done. We're going to just dip into that, touch the surface, and touch into some many other topics too. Senator, thanks so much for coming on. Greatly appreciate that.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right, so you are in East Providence, Pawtucket's District 18. Let's just go into this. Your first time as running right here for the Senate. You've dabbled into politics before that, but this is the biggest position you've been in. Let's drift back. What made you want to get into political office in general?
So back in 2012, I ran for House District 63, which is now occupied by the Majority Whip, Catherine Kazarian. It was a 4-candidate race, including myself. During that time, I was, although it was a 4-candidate race, I was predicted or expected to come in 5th. With that being said, I came in a close second race. I think it was about 184, 187 votes that I lost by. People were calling me the following day after the election, congratulating me on my essentially on my numbers that I had. So, for me, there's 2 columns. There's a win and there's a loss column. I lost. I told people, I don't understand why you're congratulating me, regardless of whether I lost by 1 vote or 201 votes. The point of the matter is I lost. So I kind of wiped my hands. I walked away and said, I wasn't going to be one of those people who sit on the sideline and complain about how government is being run in the state. And I'm pro-business. And at that time, I didn't like the way the state and the direction the state was going with the businesses. So, I lost. I wiped my hands from it. Fast forward a year and a half to almost 2 years later, the conversation came up again. However, this time around, the council seat was open for Ward 1, which is the district that I represent in the northern part of the city of East Providence. And, after going back and forth and thinking about whether I should, run again for the District 63 House seat, or should I make an attempt at the local level as a city council? And of course, that's exactly what I did. So in 2014, I ran for the council seat. I won. It was my first term. It was a 2-year term because we had a mayoral form of government. Fast forward 2 years later, 2016, I ran again. I won again at that point in time. Well, again, it was a city manager form of government. That gave me 4 years of being on the city council. And then in 2018, our government shift from a city manager form of government to a mayoral form of government. And because it shifted from a city manager to a mayoral form of government, they were 4-year terms. So I won again my third, and which was my eventually being my final term. 8 years on the city council. The last 4 years of my 8 years, I served as a city council president. And after that, I did just about everything I wanted to do, and I accomplished everything I wanted to accomplish. And it was just time to move on or move out and give somebody else a chance. And this seat became open, and I thought it was an opportunity for me to run for the Senate District 18 seat. So hence today.
Oh, sorry, Senator. I want to get into this because legislative session went into overtime a little bit. It's over now. What do you hope? What are you happy, I guess I should say, that got done? What do you wish got done that didn't get done? Just give us like that brief wrap up of what happened as far as the Rhode Island legislative session.
So for my first term, for my first year on the legislative session, it was interesting. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the people that I served with. Everybody has their own intentions, I would say. And for the most part, a lot of people have good intentions, whether you believe them or not, or whether you disagree with their beliefs. They have good intentions for their constituents. And I saw a lot of that. But for me personally, it was my first and foremost one of my first bills that I passed was being able to introduce a bill to put the transportation bill. And the transportation bill, essentially what it does is just makes everyone, for any state road projects, all underground utility companies would have to coordinate their construction schedule projects with DOT prior to DOT paving the roads. I've witnessed many times in the city of East Providence where we've paved the road and then have a underground utility come in a year, 2 years later, and sometimes even less, and dig that road back up.
Right.
And that's at the expense of the taxpayers. And it became burdensome for me and for my constituents as well. And I passed resolutions on the council to prevent this from happening. And, you know, moving up to the state legislation, that was one of my biggest goals, to make the coordination that everybody's sitting around the table, having their conversations. So when DOT goes in there to pave a road, all the underground utilities are being done prior to that road being paved. And then there shouldn't be any construction a year or two, or even anytime soon thereafter that road is being built. So that was for me, one of my biggest accomplishments. Setbacks, I wouldn't really say it was a setback because it was my first year. I wasn't expecting much, to be quite honest with you. It was about me navigating my way around and finding out, you know, how bills are being passed and just learning the process. And of course, it takes some time to understand how the process is done. And that was the bulk of my time, getting to meet, introduce myself to individuals, my colleagues in the Senate, and more importantly, learn how to navigate my way up at the State House as well.
Senator Robert Britto, it's District 18, East Providence, Pawtucket. He's in the Rhode Island State Senate. Now, Fire Breathing Rob, as we continue on into the conversation, Senator, I want to bring up, since you are on the Environmental Committee, with that said, we just saw the past couple of days, and we're seeing this more and more due to the climate changing, that there was a huge rainstorm, I think, and I don't have the correct figures, but I'm going to say we got probably close to a foot of rain in the past day, or we at least got it 6 to 12 inches. With that said, you know, places were flooded, streets, houses got flooded, and it was pretty dang bad. Now it's starting to clear up. Obviously, the heat is coming back, no rain. With that said, what can we do? Because we keep seeing, whether it's in East Providence, Johnston, Providence, all these cities keep flooding. I know Cranston had some really big floods I saw on the news. Is there anything we can do to try to, you know, obviously we can't control the weather, but can we do anything to try to prepare better for these, you know, climate change issues that are reoccurring issues that, you know, whether it's the winter with the snow or the rain in the summer, it's starting to get pretty bad for the state.
Let's rewind this conversation 1 year ago. It was just the opposite. We're having no rain. You know, you look around and how the grass is green, everything's blooming. Last year, this time, it was just the opposite. It was hot. It was humid. Grasses were brown. You water the grass constantly on a regular basis. Here we are experiencing just the opposite this year around, where we're having a lot of rain. And it's not only in our municipalities, it's not only in the state, but think about, you know, what's happening around the country. Look what's happening over in Vermont, for an example. Look over on the West Coast, the heat that they're experiencing, the consistent days of 100 plus, or more importantly, 105 and 110 degrees. So it's not only happening here. Only thing I say about here is that we've been fortunate to not to have it as bad as the rest of the country has it. I mean, if you look at whether it's in the wintertime, the snow that they're getting, last winter, it snowed one time. And the coldest day that we had was around the middle of February, and it was 10 below. And after that, wasn't all that cold also. But when you look around the country as a whole and you see the climate change, it's, there are things that need to be done. Let's talk about the infrastructure, for example. And it's not only in Cranston and Rhode Island and our municipalities, but look at our state roads. Excuse me. Let's look at our highways where 95 flooded. I think it was last year and again this year. I think it flooded as well. When it literally construction came to a halt because the rain was so much and the drainage just couldn't handle the amount of downpour that we had. So for me personally, I would like to see more of infrastructure work, that we invest a lot more money in our infrastructure and pay attention to our coastal lines as well, because it's coming. The sea levels are rising, without a doubt. We're finding it to have more rain this time of the year. And, we're seeing our ice glaciers being melting at a unprecedented rate at this point in time. So, for me, the investment should be more on our infrastructure. We really need to take a look at our infrastructure and how do we mitigate these issues and problems that we've been having lately.
Want to hit on two more topics, business and also housing as we move to the end of the interview. Let's start off with business. You're a business guy. I read Go Local Prov. I'm not sure if you've heard that. I'm sure you probably have. It's kind of a pretty, internet website that gives these, newspaper articles for people listening that don't know about Rhode Island. They just came out and said that Rhode Island's the fourth worst state in the U.S. to start a business, 47th in the country. What can, you're a business guy. What can we do to make this a little bit better? Because a lot of these states, between the taxes and, the cold weather, that's nothing you guys can't change, but they don't want to come here for that. But it's mostly the tax structure, I feel like. And do we need to give them more incentives? I feel like CVS really got a lot of incentives. Now they're moving a lot of the people out of state, whether it's overseas or out of state in general. So what can we do to keep drumming up business in the state so it's not 47th worst place to start a business in the country?
Again, I'm going to go back to my initial conversation that we talked about, how I got into politics. And first and foremost was because of business, right? We do need to attract more businesses here. And I think we're doing a better job of it than we have done in the past. We're getting better and better. Although we're fourth, I think some of the permitting process is starting to loosen up. We've seen some bills that passed for housing, which are eventually going to get into start talking about, where I think it was 12 out of 13 bills that the Speaker of the House, it passed the House, it passed the Senate, to have streamlined these construction of affordable housings to go up, without going through these hurdles. And that's what the state is always about in the past, is that we've had multiple hurdles for businesses to come here. And it's not attractive because, if you got to go through all these hurdles or permitting processes to establish a business here, well, why do it here when you can go to our neighboring states, Massachusetts or Connecticut, and you don't have to go through those hurdles? So we need to do a better job of that. I think we're working towards that, making it much easier and better for businesses, but we're not fully there yet.
Just two quick points to put the exclamation point on this topic. I am seeing a lot of biotech push into Rhode Island. I know Massachusetts is the big hub for biotech. I don't really see anything else coming. I know the soccer stadium was supposed to be a big to-do. Now there's some hiccups on whether that's going to happen or not. It looks like it probably might not. But hey, you're in Pawtucket. I'm not sure if this is in your district or not. McCoy Stadium, regardless of what happens with the soccer stadium, there was a billionaire that just came in, said that he would like to keep baseball in Pawtucket. He wants to keep that stadium and then maybe revamp it a little bit. What is your take on that?
So with respect to Tidewater, first and foremost, again, to promote economic development in this state, I thought initially it was a good idea. And I support it, to be quite honest with you. I like, more importantly, the ancillary around the soccer stadium, meaning the housing and the businesses that was incorporated into that program. And now that's being removed from the equation, which makes it a little different than what it was initially
sold.
Yeah, exactly. So now let's fast forward to the McCoy Stadium, and we have this billionaire who wants to, come up and have a baseball team there, which is great, but this is all done on the 11th hour. I mean, remember the voters in Pawtucket supported the idea of having schools on that property there. For the last 4 years, where was this individual at that point in time? And my guess is, or has he ever, not even so much my guess, but my concern is, has he ever talking to the mayor or the leadership in that city to have these open discussions? And it's just, I like the idea. I wish the poor Sox would have never left, to be quite honest with you, but we're in a situation now where the voters supported a referendum to have a school on that parcel of land. And on the 11th hour, we have somebody to come in for some 4 or 5 years later to have a continue on with with the baseball stadium. More importantly, to entice businesses and have the surrounding support with businesses and housing, perhaps. I don't know. That's something that the public, I think, would have to, the Pawtucket residents would have to talk about. But remember, we made the commitment for the schools. And if that's the case, and that's what the public wants, then that's what we should have. Before any conversation goes forward, I think those conversations need to be done with the mayor of Pawtucket, first and foremost. And I think the residents of Pawtucket need to have a say in that as well. But we're in this knee deep right now with schools going on that property, and to come on the 11th hour with no true plan, it's kind of bothersome to me.
Yeah.